Live streaming is on.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. Today is May 30, 2021. Thanks to Clinton Ignatoff for helping us. He knows what buttons to hit, and he's smart. Thank you, Clinton. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here with Shahzad Ismaily. Now, Shahzad, say your name so people hear it correct.
That was basically it. Shahzad Ismaily.
What a pleasure and honor. It's such a thrill for someone who got back to me on my email request for this here interview with a phone call. I was shocked. I was happy. Someone knows it. Oh, we can talk. We don't just have to type. That was so beautiful. And we had such a fun time talking.
I enjoyed it also. You know, I'm hitting the mixed medium space pretty hard right now. For example, there's someone I met through Milford Graves, and she prefers only communicating through like a video message. Not only, but primarily. So yeah. I've never done that before because it's kind of alarming. What you do is you take a video of yourself speaking, and then you're kind of giving totally to the person without a sense of whether they will feel up or down about what you're saying. And then you just send it along. It's sort of, I suppose, more like an old school letter, because you're writing your thoughts as intimately as possible, mailing them, and then the other person will receive it around 2 weeks later, and who knows what headspace they're in the day that they open and read that letter.
Yes. It's an amazing form. My wife uses what's called Marco Polo to stay close to her family. And it is another form. But
what's Marco Polo?
It's similar. It's like delayed. So I would say, hello, Shahzad, I'm doing this today. And then you get it and you can watch it whenever you want, and you can watch it faster.
It's interesting.
Oh man, they're boring. You go, did you hear what I said? Yeah, I heard what you said. Did you hear it faster? So let's start off. The first question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
You know, so much of what I want to say has to do with humor. So the first word that came to mind was cheese. So I'm going to stay with that for the moment. Cheese is the best thing for a human being.
Oh, that is good. But the word I first heard you say was humor, Humor.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Oh, cheese is
that was even before the word cheese. Well, cheese came into my mind first, but I think I want to go with humor now that I use that as a qualifier, because that is the best thing for human beings.
Oh my God, it's
without
amazing.
Question.
Cheese is, but are you saying cheese as in like the cheesy world, or literally the stuff you make from milk? And you're talking literally the food cheese.
I'm talking about the food cheese, which is obnoxious because cheese is literally not good for us. I mean, anytime anyone goes on a vegan diet, they can breathe better, they can move better, their system is less gummed up. So I have to revise my answer to go back to humor. Humor is the best thing for a human being, period.
I love it. What's your favorite form of information? How it comes into you?
In person. I definitely prefer in-person information.
Yeah.
So whether that means I'm receiving it as a bit of sensory data, like not from another human, but from the heat from the sun, or the sound from some wind, or from a piece of music or something. And then also, if a human wants to tell me something, it would be great if it was in person.
Yeah. Dude, that's one of my favorite answers, and I do get it a lot. It's, some people call it direct experience, the live human being experience. And so why do you think humans collect or gather information?
They want to make up stories about the world, and they also want to understand the world. And in understanding it, they want to make the world less terrifying, easier to negotiate, repetitive. And those are not all positive for me. Like, I'm very uncomfortable with the repetitive world. One of the hardest things about COVID was seeing the same blender every morning and blending celery in the morning every morning when there was celery. I just can't take that. I cannot take the repetition of the mundane. So I think a part of why they're gathering information is, how do we repeat this thing that happened yesterday that we liked and have it consistently keep taking place?
Oh yeah, so much deep in there. But let's stick on this for a second.
Yeah.
Is collecting and gathering information more innate or more invented by humans? Now, a lot of my some of my questions are like that. They're either or. I know it depends, and it's a little bit of both, but it's sort of like just the jumping off. So you don't have to answer it, but you know what I'm saying. Is it more innate or more invented to collect information?
I think I want to go with invented, because lately I've been having conversations where I'm angrily telling someone, we invented everything. And so then I want to say to them, since we invented everything, can you fucking get off my back with having to respect things? Are you serious? Like, every single thing. You're telling me you want me to respect Bach, and all of classical music is a recent invention. So why do I have to have an immense amount of respect for something that was fabricated? And so, like, I understand that a novel is fabricated, and you can read a novel and be so deeply moved by it that you can respect the author, because you're thinking, how did they come up with such a beautiful set of ideas and characters, and how much is moving me? So I understand that we can have respect for fabricated things, but I think what is troubling for me is that sometimes the respect doesn't hold in its hand that the item has been fabricated. Like, if you walk up to me and you say, look, Bach made everything up, classical music is made up, it's made up randomly by a culture of some random people, but because it's deeply beautiful, I'd like to respect this artwork that happened. That's totally comfortable for me. But if you walk up to me and you say classical music is innately a masterpiece, then I get really frustrated, because I want to say to you, it's just made up. Like, the piano is made up, and it's a ridiculous instrument. So anyhow, I suppose based on all that, I'm going to go for invented.
Beautiful. And my friend, we do these Zooms 4 or 5 times a week, and we discuss all these human inventions, everything humans invent. And he just usually says everything's invented. So when he hears you say everything's invented, now I know what you're meaning, but I'll tell you, because I've heard you talk a little about film, and I've studied film for many years, and it's only 138 years old.
Isn't that amazing? I mean,
it's not that old. And in Kenneth Anger, who's, he's an important filmmaker. It's not that I love his films. He says, the day cinema was invented was a black day for human beings. And he knows that made his life,
right.
And it's important, but it's like, as much as I think films are stupid. You sit there and you just surrender to this, and you surrender to this 90-minute event. And it's like, so anyways, I really appreciate you saying I'm going to go with, because you know that tomorrow, if we did this again, you might go, well, today I'm going to go with this, and that's all right. It's not like I'm holding you to this. This is just like, having fun. So, do thoughts create emotions?
We now know that, well, at least I now know that to be 100% true. I mean, and the reason I'm saying it so emphatically is I got a chance to personally, in person, work with this woman, Byron Katie.
Yeah.
And she is a healer, and her modality specifically is to get you to understand that everything that you're feeling is based on something you're thinking about the situation. So if I think Gerry's plan is to push me up against a wall and make me look terrible for 90 minutes, and I really have that thought, then it's going to be flooded with a bunch of associated feelings about being here for 90 minutes. Whereas if I have the thought that I currently had, which is, I'm going to open up this Zoom and just have such a great time just playing and enjoying myself for 90 minutes plus, then I have a flood of very positive feelings. And she really feels like it's that simple, and that we are totally trapping and entrapping ourselves in our current life filled with our emotions based on what we think about everything that's taking place.
Yeah, beautiful. So besides a healer, is she versed in neuroscience, anthropology, philosophy? Where else does she come from to come to that?
It's interesting. I'll try to pass along what the origin story is, even though I don't know it exactly. So this is a rough paraphrase sketch. She's a woman in a quote unquote normal life, married, has a kid or two, going to her job, sometimes unhappy, sometimes happy. And then she either had an accident or a stroke or something like that, where she woke up one day and she couldn't deeply remember what had happened yesterday, or hold on to the story of who she was supposed to be, who this person is supposed to be, how I'm supposed to feel about this event or this society. And because she was freed of this architecture of thoughts that she had had in the past, or thoughts that she was meant to have, she suddenly had a very open-hearted feeling to the world. Someone would walk up to her and she would just smile and say, "What should we get into today?" And so that then, whatever had happened with the stroke or the accident, her regular brain patterns started to come back, but that momentary deep glimpse of what it could be like, if she understood that, like, what she thinks about a situation causes everything, causes the emotions and everything else, then that means that she has control over, can undo that framework. And so then here is the key to how she suggests we work on these things. You start with a thought that you start with an emotion you're feeling. Like, let's say I'm feeling angry. Then the next thing you try to do is you try to write it down as a simple sentence. Something like, I'm angry at Gerry because he's older than me. Then the very first thing you do is you reverse it, and you read to yourself a sentence that says, I'm angry at myself because I'm older than Gerry. Then you try to figure out, even though you've reversed it, what's true about that? What resonates even a tiny bit about that? So I might discover, okay, Gerry sounds young and full of life right now because he's turned on by the work he's doing in the world. And I sound a little bit older and staid because I'm coming to the computer exhausted from what I think my life and job is. So I see youthfulness in Gerry and an elderly space in myself. And as we cycle through these like little bits of work that she suggests we do, we're able to see that my initial thought is actually more mobile, and it's this object that's outside of myself that I can push around and change and flip upside down, and it ameliorates the whole thing, and it disintegrates into like a bunch of sand that goes through your fingers.
Wow, that is so well put. So do you think or feel that the brain more detects consciousness or creates consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling? Are we detecting it, or are we actually creating it?
That's such an amazing question. And my instinct is to say it's definitely both, because, and it's both in this amazing, exactly simultaneous way. Like, I'm looking at the table in the corner, so I'm perceiving it. Therefore, I'm creating consciousness. I'm creating the object. But what was the word you used for the other one?
Is detect or create.
Exactly. So I'm detecting the table, but unfortunately, simultaneous to detecting it, I'm also calling it a table, and I'm also planning to put objects on it. So it's unfortunately like this absolutely intertwined, simultaneous detection, creating, because the data is coming in, and the data is raw data. It's like if I look at the table, there's orange, 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 brown, 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 orange. It's totally raw. But I can't help but stamp it with the creation sense of the word table and the usefulness to me of what that object is. And I kind of wish that we could slow down the bidirectionality of that. It'd be so, but unfortunately, as we got older, we lost the ability to just stay in the detection space.
Yeah.
And it's and I think that's a part of what meditation is so interesting for, is it's suggesting to us what would it be like if we simply perceived what's around us without wanting to do anything about it yet.
What, so well put, man. Do you more pursue meaning or more pursue happiness?
I unfortunately pursue happiness super hardcore, which means that I've accrued a life that is so haphazard and kind of at times devoid of meaning in a kind of ridiculous way.
I don't think so. Having listened to some hour talk of yours recently, but anyways, that's very good. You're okay. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Speed of thought, definitely, I think.
Yeah, there are no right or wrong answers, any of you, but that one you got right. So you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. That's the Audre Lorde poet.
Oh my God, the day I came across that sentiment, which was kind of recently, in the last year or two, that blew my mind, because someone took that further and said, unfortunately, all the problems we have require solving not using the tools inherent in the system that made the problem. And so therefore, unfortunately, probably most of the people alive right now can't solve any of these problems. It has to be kids who start up outside the system somehow, so they can find tools that are outside of it.
Yeah. Well, dude, you have ESP, because I didn't even get the question out. And it was like someone said, so the way the question is, it goes, Audre Lorde said, you can't dismantle the master's house using master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded, you can if you expose the tools. what new tool do you suggest? So you sort of answered, you just go to the youth and they, yeah,
I
because
think
that's
that's
like,
it. I accept. On the other hand, though, what if we flip that over and said the internet was a new tool and it seems to be fucking us really hard? So that was kind of a sad outcome where a new tool appeared, but it's making things a lot darker. Like it's not a solving tool.
Well, it leads perfectly to this. And just I wanted to say again, what you said really resonates with George Lakoff, neuroscientist. And he said when Occupy was happening, he said, you got to use the existing tools and use new, you got to use the existing language and invent new language. And Occupy did that. They were like, okay, we're going to use PR and get in Wall Street Journal, and we're going to use the, normal PR channels, and we're going to start doing live TV with video streaming on our cell phones. And they were like doing so in human microphones. So anyways, Marshall McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound, the poet, that artists are the antenna of the race. So they're broadcasting the hidden psychic effect of the things we invent. Like you said, a great statement you just said is, a bunch of, well, you didn't say this, but a bunch of hippies on LSD invented the internet. And it was like, right on, man, we're free. Communism. and we could, it is very cool. I mean, the internet has a lot of services and a lot of disservices. And so Pound taught Marshall that if we look to the artists, the musicians, all the people you work with, Yoko Ono and Laurie Anderson, you look to them, the writers, and they will expose and broadcast the hidden psychic effects so that we can cope with what we don't like about them. So we have to cope with what we don't like about the internet, because it ain't going away. And it doesn't matter if you don't have internet. If you don't use a cell phone, you still live in an internet cell phone world, even if you're in a cave in Utah. So then Marshall's big conundrum, one of his conundrums was, well, then why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects, even though they're being broadcast to us by the artist? So that's the question. Why do you think humans ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though artists reveal them to us?
So we have to bring up then, it's the 1990s. I walk into a record store and the person at the counter says, you know what annoys me about going to a Rage Against the Machine concert? There are all these people jumping up and down, enjoying the music, who are baseball cap wearing racist assholes who I run into in the grocery store and in the world constantly.
Yeah.
So I think that's the answer to your question, which is that someone is able to somehow ingest art, miss the message of the art completely, and connect with the art on some other structural level. So, because literally a Rage Against the Machine song is saying verbatim a certain political agenda. And if a super conservative racist person is enjoying the band, how are they managing to do that when the direct artistic content is opposite to their political agenda? So I think then people are receiving art and just grabbing from it the thing that they're enjoying, whether it's the 4-on-the-floor beat or the drums or the guitar riff or the colors in the painting or how attractive the lead actress looks in this experimental film. But they're not getting the content that was meant to be transferred about society.
Right, but there's a conundrum there, and that is once an artist creates their art, it's no longer theirs, it's the user. The viewer, user can use whatever they want. So, we're going to get to that a little farther, but that was really good because people have most people answer that fear. And you took it a different way. I understand that completely what you just said, because even though artists might know once they create their art, it's no longer theirs. Someone can misinterpret it. They can't control that. They can't say, "Oh, you got my message wrong." That the biggest was Sinead O'Connor in the New York Times last week. I was like avoiding reading the article, and it's like the total, complete, amazing. Everybody hated her for ripping up the picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live, and now everybody hates that Pope because he let all these people let the rape happen, and like she was doing it because her mom used to beat her up. And you know what her mom represented? One thing. Her mom had that Pope's picture on the wall.
Wow.
That's she did it. It was a personal thing.
Wow, I had no idea. That's amazing.
And me too. It was like amazing what happened. And there's like Schopenhauer, some big hotshot philosopher goes, truth is like goes through 3 stages. Like everybody goes, that's wrong. And then people start going, well, that might be right. And then the 3rd stage is, we knew that all along. Oh yeah, we knew that. We knew that she was, that's like a hidden psychic effect there. So anyways, are you more afraid of old ideas or more afraid of new ideas?
Definitely old ideas. That's my style. Like, I'm just so happy about anything I come across that feels new or feels different, because it really nourishes me a lot. And it feels like you're getting another piece of a jigsaw puzzle to put down so you can try and figure out what's the whole forest from the trees picture of this jigsaw puzzle that I've only been able to look at the pieces of so far.
Yeah. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Well, usually I lie down and I'm just asleep like seconds later. So, but the times that I have not done that, which haven't been very frequent, have been because I lied to someone and messed up a friendship or messed up a relationship or hurt somebody or fucked up some responsibility in my life. And those are the things that keep me from sleeping very easily.
Wow, you are an honest dude. That's amazing. Because, one of my questions, Marcel Proust, on what occasion do you lie? And Tom Waits said, I didn't know I needed an occasion.
So good.
So how do you think most people answer that? Before you answer it, on what occasion do you lie? How do you think most people answer that?
I mean, my guess would be most people would feel too ashamed to like fess up to that, and they'd say I don't, or not very often, or white lies when necessary, or something like that. Probably.
That's pretty close. Most people. There's only one person in 30 years said I don't lie, and I'm like, what? No, one person said great. They said, I try not to lie, but the worst thing is when you lie to yourself.
That's true.
But most people say to spare people's feelings.
Yeah.
That's what they say. Yeah, like,
Yeah.
Like when you go to a show and your friend sucks, and they'll go, "What'd you think?"
What do you? Hard moment.
My wife goes, "I had a great time," and that's pretty. That's pretty good. But I want them to say, "Dude, I got to talk to you at a good time and break down." You play live improv music, and And I sort of fake it like John Lurie. He says, this free jazz shit, anybody can do it. And then he started playing it and he goes, this is more complex than I thought it was. So I just started imitating Cecil Taylor and playing live improv music, and it was fun. And I didn't, and we had a pro come and play with us once, and it was amazing. He made us sound 10 times better. And he, at the end of the show, he goes, "You got to go home and practice, dude." And then I felt really bad. And every time I played with new people, I would say, I can't really follow you too good. And I'm just being honest up front. But if you want to follow me a little or, play off of me, that's great. And I mean, I can, but more in an abstract level. And then I played with this guy who's a pro, and he says, that was great. And I goes,
oh, that's good. That's so nice.
It's like Sun Ra, they said, the guy comes backstage and he goes, my kid could play that. And Sun Ra goes, but can they transcribe it? So can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
I've tried to do this a few times over these past years now that I have a daughter, because she's 4.5. So I just wonder, what is she going to remember of these early times? And so then I ask myself the same question. And I think the best I can do, I think I would have been maybe somewhere in the 4 to 5 area. And I remember a couple things. First off, my parents would put me in a bed sheet and they would each hold either side of it and they would swing it back and forth. And that was just such a powerfully full of love, full of happiness and real safety kind of memory. And then another one is lying down on the carpet with a bed sheet underneath me and then a box fan at my head to feel the breeze in a really, really hot summer kind of moment.
That is cool. Do you think memory is more curse or more a blessing?
I feel like a curse. That's what I'm going to say. Go for, because I just love the freedom of not having 1,000 pillars of identity that I have to deal with every day. This is who I am. This is what I did. This is what that meant. This is when that's going to come back around again.
Yeah, it's amazing, because that's like, I really feel you get what we're doing, because it's more a hunch. I'm not after thinking. I'm after just like first thought, best thought, like Ginsberg would say, or just what comes into your head. And I'm not holding you to it, but most people want to say, well, of course it's a blessing, but I get it. You're saying that it could be a curse, and that, then they, but I think, however humans came about, that, we tend to lose it towards your 70 to 80, and you get like Alzheimer's or dementia, and it's their way of going, we're going to return you to your childhood innocence, where you don't have to remember all this, like, oh, when is this payment due, or this stupid shit we got to remember. Though there's a lot of good memories, like the sheet swing. I think the beauty of that memory is that I had both parents involved.
Yeah, totally.
What amazing thing, because, most of it. So tell me someone in your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what specifically was that impact? They were like a role model, and say, what did they get? What did you get from them mainly?
And we're talking about blood family, yeah?
Well, the question's basically this: immediate family, and then outside your family. So you can define that as you. Yeah.
So immediate family, the first thing that comes up is this cousin of mine, Mukhtar, and he was maybe 10 years older than me, something like that, 10 or 12 or something. And I was a kid, and I went into my uncle's room and took some money out of his jacket, like stole money out of his jacket, so that I could go to the mall and buy a knife, like a pop-out kind of switchblade thing. And I don't know why I didn't just ask my parents for it or ask for some money from them. Maybe I was embarrassed that I was buying a knife, or maybe they had already said earlier in the day, like, we're not buying anything else, and so I didn't want to push against that. But when I got back, no one else was in the house, and he discovered me doing it. And he pulled me aside and gave me a really serious talking to, but in a super loving way. Like he said, I don't remember now, but probably something along the lines of, this isn't the way that we're meant to do things in the world. I understand why you did this. I understand that you wanted that and that you didn't want to talk to people about it. But he very gently put the information across. And he didn't tell my uncle. He didn't tell my parents. And something about that way of him doing it, where you felt safe and protected to at least be honest with one person in front of you, which then allows you to be honest with yourself about what you did and change your behavior eventually. I really appreciated that from him.
Really beautiful, really touched me deeply. Outside your immediate family, someone?
There's so many, but I mean, the first person that comes up is Milford Graves, because what I'm aiming for in music is some kind of deep transference of really vulnerable sense of self and sharing that with a sense of the other. And so I'm looking to people who do that, because it's kind of unlearnable, except by modeling, I suppose. And so I have these two immediate people around me, Milford Graves and Mark Ribot, who do that every time they play. And so I can look to it, I can try and join it. I got to play with Milford 4 times or so before he passed away. And I think I mentioned this to you, that I think 3 weeks or so before he died, he had called me and said, I want to record a bit with you, so you should bring some stuff over today. And I went over there with an engineer and a guitar and a bunch of instruments. And I walked in, I realized like how serious the situation was, because he was in a lazy boy, hunched over, just looking straight in his lap. And he had a couple of younger people there put 2 frame drums next to him that he was tapping with his fingers. And then there was a vocal mic right next to his mouth. And he was barely playing. And he was talking about what music means to him and what the drums mean to him. And I was improvising on guitar. And just the times that I played with Milford and played with Mark, they've showed me how to get there through modeling. So that would be the outside the family answer.
Amazing answer. Boy, I learned a lot just from your answer, and I appreciate how articulate you are. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
They did. They raised me as a Muslim, and a specific sect of Islam called the Shia Ismaily sect. And so that was, it was a sect. Wait, are you still there?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Wait, somehow I lost the window. Just one sec. Let me find this.
Oh, sometimes the picture might pop out, but usually it's all right.
Okay, let me just find out where, if it's still here somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Great.
So they raised me as a Muslim, and it was the specific sect of Islam called the Shia Ismaily sect.
Yep. And so did you check out ever?
You mean like leave the situation?
Well, I mean, have you just been practicing your whole life, or did you
No.
sort of?
I checked out really hard, because somewhere around 16 or 17 when I went to college, I got to know a lot of people from different walks of life, specifically people who were gay or bisexual or lesbian. And that was the first intense cognitive dissonance with religion. Like the lack of acceptance of those people was impossible for me to deal with because I grew up deeply not accepted by my peer group from 0 to 16. So I could not handle doing that to anybody else.
Yeah. And so do you pray?
I do. And what's funny is that even though I kind of am not a practicing Muslim at all, there's tons of times where I'm about to go play a concert and then I pray beforehand, because what I'm convinced of is that if I do it exactly the right way, like in this kind of Milford Graves playing music kind of way, what I'm praying for happens. And I feel like I've actually had that take place. Like when I was around 4.5 or so, which is actually is interesting. It's my daughter's current age. I was around my daughter's age, and my dad had very serious testicular cancer, and it was looking really bad. And I remember praying in exactly that, completely meaning it kind of way, and he got better. And I felt like I could hold on to this reality that if I prayed exactly in that way, the thing would happen. And I feel like I've had those experiences a number of times. Most recently, I would be nervous about playing a concert. And I think the prayer, when you do it with the right kind of intensity, it crosses over to be more like a visualization. So as you're praying, you're seeing the thing happening, and then it takes place.
Really well put. If God does exist, what would you like God to tell you after you die?
The immediate answer is everything. That's it, everything.
That is, I've never had that answer. That is evident. Everything. I've been dying for someone to say, who killed Kennedy?
Yeah.
No. God would say, well, I'm finally going to tell you everything. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think I got from my mom strongly the sensation, because she was a psychiatrist for the criminally ill, that anything that a person does is unfortunately a matter of their circumstances of growing up and of their life. So evil doesn't exist. And I also don't think there's like a perceptible viscous cloud of evil that uses people. I think all it is that you're a human being, and so you have this pretty serious set of instinctual needs. You'd like to eat something, you'd like to sleep somewhere, you'd like to feel like physical love or make love to somebody, like some sexual impulses. And so you have these needs, and it's just a matter of getting those needs fulfilled. And if something fucks up on the train ride from having the impulses to how you get them fulfilled, then you just have a very maniacal way of fulfilling those impulses that reads as evil, or that ends up harming other people.
Yeah. I get that a lot, because people go, everybody's capable of evil.
Right.
So it leads to the enemy. So the question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But this one I'm going to set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. Fellini says, I need an enemy. In Chinese proverb goes, he who cannot agree with their enemy is controlled by them. So it's a lot of thoughts, but basically the question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you address the first one? What do you think of Alan Watts saying? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I'm just going to disagree, because my initial answer has within it acknowledgement. Has the acknowledgement of, like, who the person is, what their name is, what they've done, and their presence in your life. What I was going to suggest a person does is, because I tried this once and it really worked from my anecdotal experience. You do this kind of meditation called metta. I think it's METTA. And what you specifically do is you sit down and you focus on your breath. You get into a posture, you sit still, and you focus on your in-breath and out-breath. And you bring up that person strongly in your imagination. And you imagine positive things happening to them. Whether you imagine like giving them a hug, or them receiving love from somebody, or making a whole ton of money, or whatever kind of positive circumstances you can come up with, you are just wishing for really beautiful things to happen to them. And it's bizarrely transformative of your relationship with that person.
I called that power of positive thinking or manifestation. It's like, I always say, if every human thought at once at the same time, let's not have any more war. Would war stop? And it's like, I mean, every human thought that at the same, it's just like, is there a universal power of, back to the woman you told us about, if everyone had the same thought, we all focused on, smiling, loving, whatever, James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about over 100 years ago. And he said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I think here are the three things that come to mind that I want to say. Number one, the main answer I wanted to give to that is, when we live life, we can't help but live life viewing things from our perspective. But if I watch a movie of the exact same room that I live in, I'm going to see it from their perspective, because they've chosen a different camera angle than I naturally turn my head towards. They've chosen to focus on a different object than I walk in the room and focus on. So that tree, that movie of that tree, is a reductive object of that person's perspective of the tree. When I see the tree, it's unreduced, or if it's reduced by my perspective and my choices. So that's the reason why it's amazing to go see a movie of life, because it's reduced into someone else's sequence of choices, costumes, lighting, movie, like camera angles, etc. Second thing I want to say is, it's really interesting that Foley artists will speak about this often. In a movie scene, someone is supposed to punch somebody. If we record the actual sound of someone's fist hitting someone's face, and we listen to that sound, it doesn't read as realistic to us, even though that is the actual sound. So then what they have to do is layer it with 7 more things that have nothing to do with that event, like a piece of steak hitting a table, 2 books hitting each other. Then they mix it all together, and then finally our brain registers it as really happening. So movies are this surreal hyper reality that then we read as reality, which is interesting. Then the third thing I wanted to say is, I love the fact, and I love pointing out the fact, that William Faulkner apparently spent all of his life lying to everybody around him. Apparently, the biography that I read is that he would walk into a town with a cane and make up his entire life story. He'd say, I was in the Civil War, I lost my left leg. It's mostly filled with metal, just on and on and on. And I love telling that story because it feels like we're in a world right now, or have been for a long time, I guess, or maybe the people that I spend time with, we're in a world that's obsessed with truth. That's like, what did you really do today? Who are you really? You need to be honest with me. And I understand that lying is bad, but I just think it's interesting that we hold William Faulkner in really high regard, and yet he literally was not up for the truth at all. It did not matter to him in his personal life.
Yeah. I think he was just practicing his craft.
Right.
And
right.
yeah, he was just showing up. That's like Dylan going on Pacifica Radio or wherever early in his career going, yeah, I was a carny. I went down in Arizona, New Mexico as a carny. And people go, you did that. And he goes, how do we know? We studied like every little movie made his whole life, and we go, he never did that. But we don't know. Maybe he snuck off and did that. But it doesn't matter. I mean, you see the latest doc, and there's 5 lies in it, and it's all documented. That's his way of telling the truth. That's the great Picasso line or wherever. Art is a lie that tells the truth.
Yeah.
But I like your explaining Faulkner to me. That was really important to me. But Louis Buñuel has a line that I would love to get your feelings on. He says, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it.
I love that. That resonates with me so hard because that allows me to then hold myself accountable and say, you try not to lie to people, try and be like a sincere person that's actually yourself, inhabit yourself. But also, it allows for the mystery of not knowing and the mystery of multiplicity, and that an event can take place and 2 people can really see it differently, and that's real.
Yeah. Well, that's also.
Oh wait, sorry. One other thing I was going to say is,
go ahead.
I think what I also love about that quote is it really feels like seeking. That is the mechanism to live by. And I love I love the different friends I've had over the years. Particularly, I'm thinking of this one person, Damien Rice, who is like a Irish, like a kind of songwriter fellow. What I admire about him so much is in his daily life, he's absolutely a seeker, always. And he doesn't walk in the door saying, I know. He walks in the door saying, like, tell me, or let's find it, or let's look. And that's so beautiful.
Yeah. Now, this is really important for me because 99% of people, when I say the Buñuel quote, they go, that's great. And then one person said, that's bullshit. Because if you, and I needed that. If everybody loves a piece of music or hates it, something's wrong. But if some people love it and some people hate it, you probably got something going. So one person finally broke that code and said, no, that's bullshit. And I was like, Buñuel was a prankster and a trickster, and he could have believed that statement, or he could have said it as a probe. We don't know. Right. But even if he was here right now, we could ask him, he could still fudge it a little. We could know. But they said something that brought up this idea. The cliche is that the journey is more important than the destination. So then why do we have to name a destination or seek a destination if the journey's more important? And then that implies sort of that I'm for anyone who seeks the truth. They're seeking the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Well, then why are you seeking the truth? What's so big about the truth, So how would you process that? I mean,
I think the way I'd process it is we need some telos that's pulling us towards something in order to be on a road, in order to have a journey. I guess what I'm trying to imagine is also, if you're at the top of a hill and there's no gravity, then when you let go of the ball, it doesn't roll down. It just stays still. So the object that you're seeking, it really can be the case that the object is unimportant, or finding the object is unimportant. What the object is doing is creating the force or the magnetism that allows your body to begin the seeking, to begin the movement. So the object's only point of existence is to start the movement happening.
Yeah, beautiful, because it is, I always then bring up the flaneurs, Paris in the 20s. These guys just sat there at the coffee shops and drank. They weren't seeking anything. They go, we don't have to seek anything. We'll just, like Joyce nailed, he says, I'm just waiting for epiphanies and everydayness. I don't need to go read important shit. I could just stub my toe and have an epiphany, But, I'm curious, you're in growing up, you were hearing music, had an impact on you, either live or recorded. And maybe you can guide me through that. Where did you go, oh, I can do that? Like, to just sort of walk me through becoming a listener and then becoming, oh, I can make music, I can create it.
The first thing that comes to mind when you say that is, I'm around 16 or so, and Joshua Tree comes out by U2, and I have a drum set, and I bought similar heads, or at least I thought they were similar drum heads to Larry Mullen Jr.'s head choice on the drums, which was something called an ebony pinstripe head. It was black with like a little white stripe on it, and they were more muted sounding. And I think the way at that exact moment, I approached music like I did math or anything in school. It just seemed like an object that if you took it apart, you could replicate it and figure it out. So it seemed just like anything else. Like, if you wake up in the morning and you think, I want to build a car, it's doable. You just have to find the books that have the information that tell you what a car is made of, what all the parts are, learn the skills of putting it together, buy the parts, put it together, and then that's it. Then you have a car. And so I saw music the same way, except at some point later on, I started to realize there were these unlearnable pieces of parts of music, which were like, how do you get someone to feel something? Or how do you lose yourself in it? Or how do you get the room to feel emotional or ecstatic, or things like that, which were harder, because otherwise you listen to a song by U2 and you think, okay, on a grid there are 4 strikes on this drum, and then 2 spaces, and then 4 strikes, and you could just learn that then.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because of all people, Thelonious Monk said music is math.
Totally.
So then a screenwriting teacher told me that great art or great music, great literature is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. And Kubrick says the opposite. Great art or great film is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
I tend to come to most situations with the unfortunate intention of wanting to be liked or wanting to be thought highly of. So when I walk into a room and I pick up an instrument, there's a big part of me that's like, I would like this person I'm sitting across from to think I'm a good musician, think I'm a good guitarist, think this is a special evening, feel like this is a good concert. And that intention is there, and sometimes it's also combined with, I would like to give myself so fully to this moment that it feels like the audience is intruding on my private space or is accidentally in my private space. They're accidentally looking into my bedroom or looking into my bathroom, or they're just sitting right with me. And the reason why that seems beautiful is it's just, I just think it's so magical to occasionally see somebody when they're totally raw and they don't think there's anyone looking. Like when you sometimes see your partner and he or she is asleep, and you get that moment where you can purely take in who they are without that person trying to shade who they are in some way, what like they do when they're awake. Because when someone's awake and they're interacting with you, there's a tiny part of them that's managing the experience a little bit. But if they can let go of that totally, you get to sort of nakedly see someone for a moment. So those are probably the two intentions that are around when I'm playing.
That was beautiful. Touched me deeply again. But say you're recording, and Marcel Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much, when you're recording, you were talking more about a live concert situation.
Yeah.
Say you're recording, and there are other people in the room, or maybe you're just recording yourself. How much are you thinking of the audience before you're performing in front of them? It's a recording thing. You're writing a piece of music or you're creating something. How much are you thinking of your audience?
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. I'm so fully in that moment of sound and the relationship, either if I'm alone of the sound against other sounds, or if I'm playing with someone in the studio, how we're interacting. That's kind of it.
Yeah. This is interesting because we'll stay on music for a little. Like George Manupelli's experimental filmmaker, he started the Ann Arbor Film Festival, experimental film festival 60 years ago. His mantra is ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas, another experimental filmmaking icon, said there is no self-expression. But Cecil Taylor, sort of the god of experimental piano, in my opinion, if I watch Cecil Taylor on YouTube, I go, this makes YouTube worthy of anything. Like you just hit one Cecil Taylor and you see him do that and you go, oh my God, that is, because that guy is like, to me, and I know people who think that's bullshit, that he's just, there's something about, So he said, oh, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. That's like high, we know but again, it's a both and it depends, but it's a stupid question, but is music making or art making more self-expression, or more you're a vehicle for whatever culture or technology is dominant?
In order to just like take the question and answer it, then I'm going to go for self-expression, because at one point I came across an Emerson essay that is still working on healing me to be able to like make my own music one day. And the point of the Emerson essay was the following. He said, look, no, but the reason you specifically need to make some art is that no other person on the entire planet, living or dead, has ever gone through the exact set of circumstances that you've gone through. Your parents, your life experiences, your childhood, all of it. So therefore, in a literal fashion, no one else can say what you're going to say. And therefore, we need to hear your voice, because no one else will speak those words in that order or make that music or make that visual art. And that was incredibly comforting because that goes right up against the idea that you should make art because you're good at it, or because you're talented, or because there's something unique and special that you have to say. I mean, not unique and special, but like maybe just better or good or something like that. It takes all of that stuff away. So I guess that's why I land on the side of self-expression being
Yeah.
important with art.
You're really helping me because I appreciate this because, you know, the guy from Negative Land a couple weeks ago said, yeah, Miss Elliott learned how to sing from car alarms. And I go, Ginger Baker says, how'd you get your drum sound? He goes, I was in London when they were bombing us, and the bombs went like this. Boom, 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 boom.
Wow.
And he puts it on his drum. And then
Wow.
Clyde Stubbfield, the James Brown drummer, said, I'm in Ohio. One side of my house has a factory and the other side has a train. So it's, how'd you invent drumming? So, it's all part of it,
Wow.
and they heard that, they decided to listen to that.
Yeah.
But the hidden question of that, and you're helping me psychoanalyze the questions. That's what's important. It's like inventing new questions. But you're listening closely and hearing the question. That's what I appreciate. It's not like, well, you can finagle your way around and say something, that's important. But the real question there is, can art making be egoless?
I understand where that comes from because especially in experimental music right now, there are a couple of folks that are going for really, really hard music. Like they're writing crazy math, time signatures, upside down, this, that. And I feel like what they're trying to do is get at a sense of physics or the planets, or just get rid of the human and try and make something timeless. And I unfortunately have no interest in it. Like I think the reason I have no interest in it is because I came from a math background. I feel like that's the easy side of music. If you want to give me something that's impossible to play, all I need is time. That's it, and I will be able to play it. No problem. Just give me like whatever it ends up being, 1 year, 7 years, 4 months, 2 days. All I need is time. But if you'd ask me to like transform the molecules in the room with a guitar, then you're asking for me to learn how to do something that is like I might never achieve in my life, but is worth trying. And that's where the magic is for me.
Yeah. I immediately thought when you said that at the beginning, I would say to them, go listen to Eric Satie.
Right, totally.
Play fucking 4 notes and you're like, ah,
Yeah.
it spawns Eno and the whole world is like
Yeah.
walking around. He's just like twiddling his thumbs. Like, where did that guy get that? That's the beauty, is like somehow I love Satie. On one of his music notes, it tells you what to do, and he says, play like a bird with a toothache.
Oh, so good.
But the Kronos, early in their career, hired Zappa to write a song for him. And I asked them, I goes, who's the hardest composers? And they go, Elliott Carter and Zappa. And so Frank wrote 3 movements, and they said, the 3rd movement's too hard. And he goes, then don't play it.
Wow.
And it's like, people sort of misconstrue Frank. Some of us who romanticize him, saying he's an evil scientist, like, I'll show them they can't play it. But, he was just having fun with it. And, we don't know. Again, we can only go into biographies, letters, people talking on intention. Because, the next question would be simple. What do you think? What do you feel was the motive of the cave artist? Not what Herzog said in the doc or the anthropologist, just your a hunch, your impulse.
You know, I feel like the hunch is worth trusting, because I feel like the two humans that are talking to each other right now, we're still essentially the same humans as those humans. So if I have like if I imagine why I might have been doing it, there's a pretty strong chance it might have been why they were doing it, because the same humanity is here. And what comes to me is that they wanted to see again what they only saw briefly outdoors. So let's say they were hiding behind a tree and they saw this like bizarre, beautiful red animal rush through in front of them. And that was their only moment of seeing. They don't have a Polaroid camera. They don't have a movie camera. So they go back to the cave so that they could more deeply and slowly imbue themselves in that visual data and that visual moment or that experience. So I guess it would be that they want to see again.
Yeah. It's an amazing thought. It's really beautiful. And the real a big phenomenon is we have cave paintings, but we don't have cave music and we don't have cave dance. So what's the function of music?
It's so hard to answer, because everything's so deeply poisoned. Like, it's poisoned by the fact that someone makes a song, and then there's a music critic that writes about it, gives a number of stars, and someone else buys it and it's for sale somewhere else. And we're just like, that is so deep now in us as a purpose and as a plan. And a musician comes out of school and they're right away thinking about the business side of it and how to make a living. I mean, understandably, because you need to make a living to have an apartment and all that, but still, I'm going to have to go with it has no purpose. And the reason I have to say that is I can't think of any one of the purposes that come to my mind, like ceremonial or to uplift your spirits or to feel something. I can't think of any purpose that is bigger than any other one.
Yeah.
So therefore, your only choices are it either has multiple purposes or it has no defined purpose. And I want to go with it has no purpose, because then that means that anyone can pick it up and use it for anything. Like, imagine if you had a screwdriver and there were no screws in the world. So you would pick up the screwdriver and it has no purpose, which means that now I could legitimately eat with it, or I could pry open my door with it, or I could stab someone with it. It has no purpose. But then that, in a way, it's very freeing, because it means that I can use it for many things now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's Mark Twain said, when you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah, that's so good.
But you nailed it, dude. Stravinsky said he gave lectures that music means nothing. And he also said most people don't know what they like what they know. So you know if you play top 40 music, it's like, well, what about Billie Holiday and the Shags? Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So you only know what they've played us. And I was lucky that they played a variety of stuff for us growing up. But the other thing is that Mickey Hart has a great book on, you know, the drummer from the Dead, on the history of music, and he says, you know, it was to warning. Yeah, you know, they're coming, bum, 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 means they're coming to get the food and to dance, you know, that music's to dance. But the no purpose thing is beautiful. And you're in what you said after it really reminded me of something we just talked about is Zappa would say, I only write music for myself, and if other people like it, great. And it's like, dude, you're romanticizing it because you were raised in a capitalistic consumer culture. You cannot, you know, avoid knowing if you hit these notes and sing these lyrics that it might give you the income. So, you know, his big fight was, or, you know, not big fight, but his big authoritarian, like against authority, was when they submitted Beefheart's first singles or something to I've talked to him, Herb Alpert, A&M Records. They wrote a letter and said the feedback would not be good for my kids.
Wow.
And then Frank has this line in Joe's Garage. It says, I'm going to lay on my back in my lonely teenage room in a semi-canatonic state and dream of guitar notes that would irritate record executives.
Wow.
You know, and it's like, that's all us stupid Zappa fans could hear, is like, that's so cool, you know, and then, you know, like rationaling, you know, the screechy guitar. Sorry to go on these rampages, but there's, my friend has this theory of music or protocols, is the 3 T's: technique, theory, and taste. So theory, you learn what's in the G key. Technique is I can play a scale. How does one acquire taste?
Somehow I feel like it must be innate for every single person, because you walk into a room and you feel like, I like that, I don't like that, I like that, I don't like that. So therefore, everyone has a taste in things. And I suppose maybe inside the question is like, how do you have good taste? Or how do you have taste that is not just period the word taste, because everyone has it. All I can say to that is that I just have bad taste. Like I have bad taste and I'm just staying with it. And that's it. Like, and I think what causes me to say that is somewhere in me I have a hard time with, let's get to know the good restaurants, the good food, the good paintings, the good music. I'm just pissed about it. And I think it must be because something about that idea has an inclusive and exclusive, it builds up a structure of inside outside. And because I was a kid that grew up on the outside, I have a discomfort with anything, even if it's positive, that says this is included and this is excluded from the circle of what should and shouldn't be. And so I think because of that, I keep turning my back on whatever is a discussion about good restaurant, good food, good art. I just keep walking away, which I think is at times not helpful for my own like trajectory as an artist, because I think it's worth exploring, what does this music feel like? Why is it powerful and meaningful and compelling, that kind of thing. And it's probably why I tend to keep leaning on whether the music is vulnerable or giving or open-hearted or pure or coming from inside the person. And that's what I tend to lean on for looking for taste or looking for good and bad, because then it feels like that allows for an inclusivity of all kinds of people and styles and possibilities.
Yeah. It's sort of center without margins. And it's like, I'm snooty and I can say, oh, I hate that. And people go, that's a strong word. And I will say, like, oh, I hate the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Doors. And if you live in Venice, California, and you say you hate the Doors, they'll arrest you. It's illegal to hate the Doors. Now, of course, I don't hate any of those bands. It's just the way I talk, because that got so huge. Led Zeppelin led me, when my sister brought home Led Zeppelin 2, it led me to the blues. So I've loved the blues my whole life. It's deep ingrained in me. And then Led Zeppelin got so big, I hated them.
Yeah.
And then I went back and I showed Led Zeppelin in our art gallery in Venice. And it was like 8 homeless dudes in this big art gallery playing Zeppelin live for like 5 hours, the DVD set. And I would turn the sound off in the middle of a song, and all 8 of us would sing the song, and you didn't even need them. But it showed you their subtlety in live, as opposed to their vinyl is all balls out, and there's more subtlety when they're playing it live. And then I appreciated them again, but it doesn't mean, it's just that stupid thing you go through in your life where you say, oh, I hate that. I asked George Clinton once, what kind of music do you like? He goes, I like the kind of music that pisses me off. And I go, why do I hate this? And that's really, of course he gravitates towards stuff that he likes, but why would this piss him off? Try to figure it out. Is it risky, courageous, and like a waste of time? Who knows? What's more fundamental, language or music?
I'm going to go for music, because I think that it clearly existed. I mean, I don't have proof, but I think it existed pre-language, way pre-language. And I feel like we would have noticed things as humans, like the repetition of 2 trees falling, or the sound of a bunch of frogs or insects or something. Like, I think sound and repeated sounds probably would have made a mark on us much earlier than language.
Yeah. Song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is ultimately connected to language difference. Any comment? I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just wondering if you have a comment on that.
The 2 cultures that come to my mind suddenly are like France and Indonesia. So I was trying to think about, like, do I think that French songwriters, or like the classic kind of Amélie score kind of French cabaret music, bears any resemblance to the way the language sounds or the architecture of the language? And similarly, knowing a little bit about gamelan and Balinese music and having heard Indonesian spoken when I was down there, whether there's anything. So I'm going to go for a hard no on, like, no relationship between the culture, the spoken language, and therefore the music that happened.
Yeah. T.S. Eliot said poetry can communicate before it's understood. And I find that in music. If I hear a Brazilian song or tuba throat singers, I go, it's really communicating. But I don't know what specifically, but it's communicating something to me.
That's so right. And Milford said many times when I went to visit him that if you really want to know whether you're doing anything as a musician, go where they have no reference for your playing. Because it's fine for you to be some experimental musician that plays in a venue in New York where people are expected to respond to you a certain way, but go take that music into a remote village in Japan filled with old people and then see if you're actually moving anybody. And if you are, then something's happening. And I think he spoke about that from personal experience, where when he went to go perform with Butoh dancers, he made pit stops and like played little concerts in these weird villages in Japan. And then they would run up to him and say they'd be so excited about his show and everything.
Yeah, and showing experimental film, especially to homeless people, I found that they don't have any reference. Like it's a snooty, rich art kids world, and they're like, "Oh, that was good," or "That was," So Aaron Copland says the four major ingredients of music are melody, harmony, rhythm, and tone color. What is tone color in layperson's terms? What do you call? How do you define that or understand that?
I'm super excited about tone color because I have one synthesizer in particular that I know really, really well now, and it's made by this company Moog, and it's called the Moog Rogue. It's a very small synth. It's black. It's plastic. Very easy to travel with. I often go on tour with it with no case, just carrying it right onto the plane and sticking it in the overhead. With that synth, there's a very clear explanation of tone color, which is that you play a note and you can absolutely walk into a recording session, be paid and asked to perform on a song, play one note, and then through changing the sonic fingerprint of that note, as time passes, it becomes a kaleidoscopic world that you've added to someone else's song. So you're not changing the pitch, you're not changing the rhythm, you're not changing the harmony. All you're doing is you're starting with and then you're moving it from you're just changing the textural feeling of it. And
it's really good.
Yeah.
You put it in layperson's term. Usually people go timbre, and I goes, well, what's timbre?
Yeah.
Because that's just another musical term.
Yeah.
A textural feeling. And so what's more important, conviction or compromise?
I'm going to go with conviction because I'm currently only compromising, and I believe in the conviction people. So I'm making my way over to their camp.
That's beautiful. Tell me one major element of your creative output, music, your sensibility in being creative, that's changed since you started, and one that stayed the same.
The one that stayed the same is a sense of softness, or welcoming another person to feel so safe and comfortable in the space that we're in that they show the inner part of themselves. So that has stayed the same. And then what has changed is over time, I've gained more self-confidence and more conviction. So it allows me to walk into a musical situation and make an initial statement and make it in a strong, self-confident way so that if other people want to, they can coalesce around it. Whereas earlier, I would much more often be in a secondary, waiting, responding, listening space, and a bit too shy to make that like central sort of 2x4 kind of object that other things would coalesce around.
That was beautiful, man. I wish I could do that. Maybe I can now that you've articulated.
Yeah, good.
I got a plan here. Well, I love that word softness because I studied this word jujitsu in judo, and it comes from softness and gentleness, that you have to push and pull. You have to, it sort of goes along with this next question is Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength rather than we're usually taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness that you've incorporated to become a strength.
Well, at this exact moment, what comes up is I sing in a really fragile, kind of vulnerable, breathy kind of way. And so just last night, through a number of funny circumstances, I found out that it was a friend's birthday, and I was consequently hiring a pedal steel player to record on something for me, just so that like she would get some money. Like I didn't have anything for her to record on. I just wanted to like help this musician by hiring her. And then she told me that her friend was having a birthday, who I also know. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to figure out what song that person would like for their birthday, record it, hire her to play pedal steel on it, pay her for that session, and then send it to the person whose birthday it was. So, so it was Sheryl Crow's song, "Are You Strong Enough to Be My Man?" So
Yeah.
at something like 2 a.m. last night, I was still trying to record it, and I was singing it, and my voice is a weakness that I have just taken to be a strength, just tried to flip into being a strength.
Beautiful. And so, how do you find peace of mind?
I think it's correct that you find peace of mind by taking care of yourself. And it's something I have not done till COVID. Like I was so much more interested in what is the next thing I can do that will be fun, and then just really blazing forward. And then with COVID, I tried a bunch of things like cooking, meditating, breathing exercises, um, waking up and blending celery juice and all that kind of stuff. And it gave me a low level, like pretty strong river of peace underneath everything. And I didn't understand this whole taking care of yourself thing. So I think that's where I think it is.
Wow. And just a side note, I've been a juicer for about 20 years, but I extract the pulp. When you do celery, do you eat the pulp or you just extract the juice?
So I've been making it in this Vitamix blender and then straining it through like a sieve strainer thing, so the juice just comes down, and then I eat the pulp afterwards.
Oh, I see. That's interesting. Good. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I would say the best piece of advice I could give you is don't scramble to do more. Do way, 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 way less, and just do each thing really, really well. And that's that. I wish I had known that. I'm only just figuring that out now. And I think that is the way to go.
Look at Clinton goes, less is more. Bucky Fuller all the way, dude. That is something I'm stumbling. That was great. I am stumbling so much because as I get older, I'm like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. And then I got all these projects and I'm like, wait a minute, slow down, just do one at a time. Why is our brain doing that? That's a wise thing. How'd you come to that, though? I mean,
just
you said
lots and lots of failure, lots and lots of like not getting this person this thing and that thing, and like messing up this, and it was only because of time. Like if I had exponential amount of time, I would get to everything, but you just don't. Yeah.
So these are 5 Alan Watts questions, just briefly, in like 3 to 5 words, just off the top of your head. Who started it all?
So many funny things come to mind, like God, Bruce Springsteen, Bunny Wailer. But let's see, who really did start it all? I mean, it's obvious, my mom and dad.
Oh, that's
because in the sense that like I don't perceive anything until I'm alive. They gave birth to me. That's it. They started it. Yeah.
Are we going to make it?
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The entire human race is going to get decimated, which is 100% fine. Because the planet is like 4.5 billion years old. The next awesome thing is going to happen over here.
Where do we put it?
Again, the funny answer is like put it in our mouth, like just in our butt. But the thing is, I think the place that we put it, I think we end up putting it in space.
Nice. Who's cleaning it up?
The poor people. The poor people are always cleaning it up because they just need the work.
I have to do this anecdote to that answer. Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, a few of these people get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame complain. They go, "You guys charge my band members $10,000 just to come to this stupid ceremony. You know, can't I get passes for my whole band? No, just you and your wife, and everybody else has to pay $10,000. So, you know, some people will stand up there at the press conference and complain. Steve Miller did really articulate, but Iggy gets there, and you know, his record company probably paid for the other guys to come. So, you know, who knows? And he gets up there and he goes, "I want to thank all the poor people who started rock and roll." And then all the white-haired ponytail record executives go, "Right on, brother." You know, and it's like they don't remember that there were poor people starting music. My favorite is Charlie Christian and T-Bone Walker were street musicians in Houston, and they shared one guitar. So they're changing the history of guitar, going, "Here, your turn. Now your turn."
Wow.
We don't think of that. And then, you know, one of the staple singers, the son died last week, and it said his dad worked shoveling shit. You know, Pop's, you know, like these guys, you know, Pop Staple wore a suit and tie, and that was some amazing music. But he started off with jobs like really lowly jobs, you know, poor, like you said, who's cleaning it up? Poor people. Yikes. Okay, the last Alan Watts question is it serious?
No.
Very good.
No, none of it is.
Okay, a few more, and I'm really glad we had fun with this, because not only did I have fun, as I learned a lot. Which way should toilet paper come off the roll, over or under?
Over.
Why?
Because that's the way I started it. I started it.
That's the way, you know, you're right. The patent is 100 years old and it hasn't gone over. But wow. I do have 20 to 10%, percent of people say under.
Wow.
If a publisher was to release your autobiography, off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Till Death Do Us Part.
and they said, we want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell would it be?
The purple, the lavender, the purple flower.
Nice. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed, and what would it be made of?
So I would put it, this is what comes to the top of the head. I would put it in the center of the ocean. It would be made out of plastic bottles, and there would be a big sign hanging from my neck that says, "You did this."
I love that. That is, you did this. So it's his fault. And then we could put that photo on the cover of National Geographic.
Yeah.
No Photoshop, the real thing. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Well, that's such a good question, a really hard one. Let's see. Okay, this is the best answer I can come up with. Something good that I never had is two parents that were like affectionately in love with each other. And the only reason I never want it is because that's not who they are. And I'd rather they just be who they are than be anyone that they're not.
That is an amazing answer. I'm going to send you the preview to my feature film. I have this homeless guy saying that exact answer. Wow. It's amazing how he said, you know, I come from a dysfunctional family, but that's who I am. And it's good to have a functioning family, but it's really well put. I appreciate that. That's deep. That you understand what I do with these is I'm trying to get people to jump out of their stock lines and go a little deeper. And yeah. I'm fine with the stock lines. That's some people can, you know, so if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
I would go down. I would duck down.
So Joseph Boyes, the artist, he said, make the secrets productive. Lou Welsh is a beat poet. He said, guard the secrets, but constantly reveal them. But it was Thornton Wilder, 1928, he said, art is confession. Art is the secret told. But it's not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. You've laid your cards on the table for more than 90 minutes. You've been very articulate. So in asking this, I'm not implying you haven't already said this, but what's it really all about for you?
I alluded to it briefly in the answer to one question. So unfortunately, it's still all about wanting to be liked, wanting to be seen as interesting or compelling, or wanting to be respected, wanting to be seen as a really deep, wonderful, beautiful person, wanting to be seen as a good musician. So that's what it's still really all about. And I'm trying to gently see what it would be like to live in a way that you feel worthwhile, even if you do nothing. Yeah. Even if you don't achieve anything. And because I'm trying to work on that for myself, it's actually super helpful, because I think I could get to the point as a father to really honestly say to my daughter, you are worthwhile regardless of what you do, if you do nothing. And I think that's incredibly that's an incredibly healing way to be a parent, and also a way to be towards yourself.
Yeah. Really beautifully put. And it evokes, Zappa in the middle of one of his songs, he goes, "Nothing is what I want." A true Zen saying, and he's mocking Zen, but he's really saying a lot. Nothing is what I want. And then the Balinese, this is McLuhan's favorite. The Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. So it's not like I'm going to go do some, drive and, Clinton, do you want to ask something?
This
Come on,
is fantastic.
Come on.
This is like,
come on, Brad.
I've sat through 32, and sat through has a negative connotation. No, I've enjoyed. I've been like stimulated by 32 of these interviews so far. And this one is exceptional. So thank you, Shahzad.
You're welcome.
Shahzad. I had some bad news tonight, and it turned out it was all for nothing. So that's why I decided not to participate. But I received good word that everything's fine, and all my worries were for nothing. So, but
I'm glad to hear it. Good time to celebrate. So great.
We'll drink to that and let this guy go to bed, and me too, because it's 3 hours past my bedtime. So,
oh my God, Jerry, that's terrible.
Unless you have one, go ahead, because I'm going to end.
I would love to get a question from you.
It's really interesting. I found it very fascinating, your answer to Jerry's question regarding his, what is something that's good that you've never had and you don't want. And of course, he already harped on it. But it seems to say a lot about a level of self-acceptance, that it's like you're accepting a level of extra difficulty, but because of some form of resilience, you've overcome it. And so then now you feel actually having been blessed by what began as an unfortunate situation, right? Yeah, that's fantastic. I don't mean to pry, but what is it that you spun, besides your voice, out of I'm gonna repeat one of Jerry's questions. What is it you spun out of a weakness into a strength in that context?
So, when you asked the question, the first thing that came to mind was ectodermal dysplasia. I was born with this very rare genetic disorder, which means that you have kind of facial features I have, meaning people with ectodermal dysplasia look like they're related. They look more like each other than their family members. It also means you don't sweat. You have very little hair. You have no teeth. These are dentures. You have no tear ducts. And so the no sweating thing, it means you don't have any homeostasis. So when it's hot outside, you get a fever. When it's cold outside, you get cold. You don't stay at this easy 98 kind of space. And what's been interesting is over all these years, I've, in many, many, many micro moments and macro moments, taken being unusual and just made it like the superpower. So it's been pretty fun. There's still definitely weird moments where you dip back into a 12-year-old self that's just bummed about it. So for example, there was one time I was on a train in New York on a subway, and it was Halloween, and someone in the subway car yelled out super loud, "You don't even need a costume! You don't even need a mask!" That kind of thing. And that took me, for some reason, it just instantaneously took me back to 9 years old, and how grim that was, because that was the 0 to 14 peer group space, so brutal. And my mom is now living with me, and she has some pictures, and my wife is looking at these pictures, and I'm looking at them kind of for the first time in 30 years, my wife for the first time ever. And it's amazing because I'm looking at these pictures of an 8-year-old kid, and because of ectodermal dysplasia, you have very sparse hair, no teeth, etc. I literally look like a miniature grandfather. And how wild. I'm just looking at the picture and I'm thinking, what did this kid feel like walking into the average everyday elementary school. It must have been insane. But so that got completely flipped around, luckily, as the years passed, into just being like a more superpower style.
Superpower.
Yeah.
You grew into it.
But did
Yeah.
your parents had a choice to mainstream you or not, or they just had no
They
doubt?
Man, they didn't know. Like, my parents were coming from Pakistan a few years before I was born. They went straight to some fucking small town in Pennsylvania and got good jobs for themselves. And I was just in that public school. It was so intense. And I was just, as I got older, I was so excited to move to a big city where there's enough subcultures that you find your people. But in the small towns, they just weren't there.
But did you have to take meds ever, or did they say?
I did. I did have to, like, one thing about ectodermal dysplasia meant that you had like a lot of lung illnesses as a kid. So I took like antibiotics when I get sick here and there and that kind of thing. But, or do you mean more psychological meds?
Well, no, just I meant more meds, but I was just saying, like, is there like some sort of procedure or remedy? They go,
oh,
well, you
no. What's so interesting is it's on the X chromosome, and it's a gene that it's like basically like this. You're a little embryo, and you're rolling around inside your mom, and at every single moment, there's a signal that tells some of the cell matter to become something. So there's a signal that says now you should become the arm, you become an eyeball, and at one point there's a signal that says you become the skin system, and in that skin system is sweat glands, tear ducts, teeth, hair, etc. And so there was something missing in that moment, and so the skin system is missing a lot of its functionality. Yeah. And so there's not really like medication. It's like more of a structural thing.
Yeah. Well, this has been a pleasure and an honor. I have two more. What's the healthiest cultural or, impactful shift you see developing today in general in the world?
It really seems like people are interested in taking care of their health with what they eat. I mean, barring alcohol, which is still hilariously like super fashionable in our society. And I'm just amazed. Like, I just want us to at least like acknowledge the fact that it is straight up a poison and we enjoy it. Like, it's like that thing about Bach. Like, as long as people can come up to me and say, look, Bach is invented, the piano's invented, it's completely fictitious, but it's incredible, then I'm super psyched. So if someone is, I think what gets to me sometimes is being at a restaurant and someone walks up to me and says, would you like this glass of such and such? It has a hint of oak and then the slight aftertaste of grapes. If they could just include that it's poisonous and will kill you if you drink too much of it, I'm all for it. But it seems like it's kind of nice that en masse we're moving towards like not smoking indoors, eating better, legalizing marijuana, just aiming towards like more health, and which because I'm starting to realize that physically taking care of yourself straight up leads to more happiness, because it's like a structural one-to-one. If I wake up and I eat a couple of bagels and a chocolate croissant, which is what I want to eat, I'm more bummed out that day. But if I wake up and like juice some celery, which is absolutely what I do not want to do, I'm feeling happier that day, which is just,
That's beautiful. Two little quick things. When health food started coming in, we would tell my dad, that has a lot of preservatives in it. And he'd go, I need all the preservatives I can get. And he did live till like 95.
Yeah, he got preserved. That's so great.
Then what you said too is like, think of all the jazz musicians and that suffered from the smoke of all the patrons smoking cigarettes. That was just like, you used to go to the doctor and the doctor would be smoking, and it was like
so true.
That cartoon, the patient's waiting in the waiting room and the nurse comes in and says, the doctor will kill you now.
Oh man, I remember being a little kid and flying to Pakistan and the entire plane was smoking and it's like a tiny closed cylinder.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Yeah.
And so what an honor and a pleasure. I mean, Clinton really nailed it. And he sat through 32. I've been doing this for 30 years. It's really touching when I'm really enlightened throughout. And the person gets it and they're articulate. And it's really, beautiful. It goes back to that. How much is their feeling and how much is their thought? It's like so what gives you the most optimism?
It's somehow built in. There's optimism when I wake up and there's pessimism by the time I'm going to bed. And I'm kind of in that cycle. And sometimes I like jokingly say, it is a little bit silly that we don't think that men have any sort of like hormonal cycles, because I at least think I have one that's just a 24-hour one. The moment I wake up, I'm just pretty psyched for like a good first half of the day. And then depending on what happens in the rest of the day. So I have some sort of built-in morning optimism. And so I'd say that the straight up answer to that is hormonal morning optimism.
Yeah.
That's what gives me optimism at the moment.
But there's a funny twist to that. Morning as in M-O-R-N.
Yeah, that's right.
M-O-U-R-N.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Shahzad.
You're
welcome. Been
an
honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
I really appreciated doing this. Thanks, both of you.